This film is made in memory of Yasmin Khan, who in the few years since her diagnosis raised £40,000 for brain tumour research. That's a life. Good morning everybody and welcome back to the Common Farm Flowers YouTube channel. Today I'm making funeral flowers for a young lady who died with a brain tumour a few weeks ago. And it's very sad when a young person dies. But that doesn't mean we don't celebrate their lives, recognise the contribution they made. And so the flowers are possibly, for young people, I think the funeral flowers I make are the most important flowers I make altogether. Brain tumours, I've written it down, I've printed it because I can't, I think it's really important that we all know a little bit about brain tumours because they can unexpectedly leap up in all kinds of people, and the symptoms are often very difficult to recognise. So I've written a bit down because then I won't miss anything out. Right. Brain tumours in children and young people are not common, but they are very serious. In fact, they are the biggest cause of cancer death for children and teenagers in the UK. Around 500 young people, are diagnosed every year. The signs of a brain tumour can be tricky to spot. Headaches that don't go away, sickness, problems with balance or eyesight, or changes in behaviour can all be clues. Because these signs are also common in everyday illnesses, it can sometimes take months before a diagnosis is made, and that delay can make treatment more difficult. My brother had a brain tumour years ago, and for years he had bouts of sickness, or he would fall over and had terrible raging headaches, but they were never connected. Well, not for a long time. And when they were connected, the brain tumour at the top of his spinal column was the size of a grapefruit. Not surprising he was falling over. And so it made it very difficult to treat. So if you know somebody, if there's just, when somebody, sometimes people are sick and clearly they have an upset tummy. But if people are sick suddenly for no reason, it's worth checking out. And you can go to your GP, but you can also go to your optometrist who can look through the back of the eye. There are lots of different ways where you can say, I just don't feel this is right. And don't let and I understand GPs are busy and they might think you're being a fussy parent or whatever. I get it. But if you suspect there's something really wrong, push for a scan. Just say, come on, can we look at this? Say, I'm worried that there might be a brain tumour. At which point, hopefully, you'll get a closer look. Anyway, treatment usually involves surgery and sometimes chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Surgery can remove part or all of the tumour, but because the brain is so delicate, it's not always possible to take it all away. So chemotherapy and radiotherapy aim to shrink the tumour to stop it from growing. And obviously there is research, but it's not a huge amount of research because people don't know that brain tumours when somebody receives a diagnosis of a brain tumour, it is not something that is easily resolved. It needs a lot, and people don't always recover. It's not like other cancers, which are not easier to treat, but have had more research. And so you're more likely to have a better resolution to the situation. While survival rates have improved for many cancers, progress for brain tumours has been slower, which is why raising awareness and supporting research matters so much. Every young life affected shows us why this work shouldn't wait. So I'm making flowers for my friend's daughter, and for everybody who knows a young person or a young adult who's been affected in this way. And the flowers are going to be a great celebration of a good life well lived, because I also believe that to say that it's a waste if a young person dies young, if a person dies young, it's a waste or a shame. Yes, it is. But I also believe that no matter how long we have on this earth, we make a huge difference. And so these flowers are to celebrate the difference, the good difference, the good effect that everybody has on this earth, no matter how short their life may be. Right, enough of this weeping and wailing. Let's go cutting. So it's going to be, I had a lovely chat with her mum, and there is going to be nothing funereal about these flowers. We're going to have 4 big buckets of flowers. It's quite a big church. And so to put flowers on the windowsill and things, when it's such a big space, they'll just get lost. And it's a very intimate funeral. They're going to have a bigger memorial service later on, but for the funeral itself, it's just really, really close friends and family. So not loads of people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink everything down so that the focus is all on the young person and her family. The sides of the church can just be out of the picture. We want to bring all the focus in. So I'm going to have 4 big buckets. And they said, buckets of flowers? Yeah, buckets. They're lovely, worn, galvanised, so silvery containers. And they are going to stand like guardians around the coffin. And then I'm going to do a lovely, beautiful wreath to go on the coffin. That's all there's going to be, except for then there's going to be a container with some single stems for the people who are at the funeral to put on the coffin at the end to say goodbye. And they're going to be pink. So we're going for colour, lovely pink. So let's go cutting. We'll see what we've got. It's the 18th of August, so and we've had the most enormous heat wave. I have hardly watered my garden this summer. I've been really, really careful because I don't see the point of flower farming being such a huge cost on the environment. And we are on very thick clay, so if you're on free draining sand, I feel your pain. But we are on very, very thick clay, so I have hardly watered. But the garden has shown an enormous amount of resilience, which is amazing. Anyway, let's go and cut pink, white and green and make flowers to celebrate a very good life well lived and somebody who was so treasured. Right, on we go. And if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe, press the bell icon, and we'll tell you when we've got more clips coming up. And if any of the tips and tricks we give you along the way are useful, you can always join my club. The club is a really great, supportive community, and I put the link in the blurb to all my clips. Right, on we go. So everything I cut for this work, I'm going to do in 50s. That's 10 stems each for the buckets, which are going to be like centuries, and 10 stems for the wreath. I'm unlikely to use all the 10 stems in the wreath, and so I know that at the end there will be enough spare of the individual stems for people to put on the coffin. So altogether I'm going for about 350 stems. I may go a little bit more, but that's my ballpark, and I'm going to build from the ground up. So we'll start with foliage. Hydrangeas obviously are going to be amazing, and then we'll have some roses, and then we'll go down to the cosmos. And look at this chocolate mint. I think we will have some chocolate mint as a base. And I'm cutting today, it's Monday, and the funeral's on Wednesday, but I want the flowers to be really, really well conditioned before I do the floristry tomorrow. And I hope The forecast is no rain, but look. So I'm hoping. So I'm cutting slightly because I'm hoping we'll get some rain. I can feel moisture in the air. And then I've got tomorrow to do the floristry. So today everything will sit and have a lovely drink in water. And then tomorrow, Tuesday, I'll do the floristry. Wednesday, I'll leave early in the morning on Wednesday and go up to London with the flowers. I can feel moisture in the air. It's been so dry that we've lost a tree. This is one of our lovely Monterey pines, has just fallen over. Luckily caused no damage. It just had room to fall over without crashing into any of the flower beds. But I think this is a victim of the dry weather. We've had no really appreciable rain since March, and we're now mid-August. Very sad. There's another one behind it. And then so that's another Monterey pine, and then that's a Scots pine, which probably will do better. But we'll see. Anyway, sad day. We planted this as a tiny 9-inch whip. This is about 15 years of growth. They're fast-growing trees. Fast-growing trees can get knocked over in the wind because they haven't got their roots down enough to hold themselves up. And if it hasn't got enough water, it's got nothing to hold on to. And one of the foliages I'm going to have is this lovely, this is Rosa Tuscany Superb. And it's gorgeous, really lovely, good foliage at the end of the season. So I'm cutting a bit early, but there's plenty. It goes better colour. You can see, this is here. You get sort of springy new growth, older growth. And then as the season goes on, you get really good autumn colour on it. So I should leave it, but I might have some. We'll see how we go. So there are my 50 roses, but actually I've got loads more, so I'm going to keep cutting. These need deadheading, but I'll also cut them. And can you see how they're a bit of a blue pink? Do you understand what I mean by a blue pink? They're a bit blue, this pink. And so I'm going to warm them up with some of the apricotta, which will soften the look. These need deadheading too, but you see I snip this off and then I get this whole stem, lots of buds and flowers, and it looks great. So cutting hard into your cosmos massively refreshes the crop. This Nicotiana is going to give me some lovely zingy green, as well as these lovely green zinnias. I'm a huge fan of a green zinnia, as you'll see by the fact that if I carry along the row, more green zinnias and white zinnias. And I might have some hot pink zinnias. I am an enormous fan. I just love this amaranthus. I love all kinds of amaranthus, and for big buckets, they finish off the edges of the buckets really nicely. You see how they're going to hang and edge the work. Love them. This is the lime green. Isn't that gorgeous? And I'm not going to put dahlias in the arrangements, but I'm going to have them for people to put on the coffin as it passes, in all the pinks, from this blush, this is Café au lait Royal, through to the bluer pinks. We'll have a big bucket of them. Later the same day, looks like a dinosaur. Right, so here are the ingredients. Absolutely lovely. All pink and white and cream and green, very fresh. And finally, I've just cut, it's Tuesday morning, so the funeral's tomorrow. And I've just cut 50 stems of dahlias, which are going to be for everybody to lay on the coffin at the end, which I think is a lovely way to say goodbye. What a good idea. So I'm going to start by making the coffin top, and I've laid all my material out on the floor, and I'm just going to work very, very slowly. This is a very thoughtful process. I'm going to make 3 bouquets which get tied together. One long, one medium, one shorter, and then and tied together they make a great big sheaf, and I'll show you when I've finished. But it's quite a nice way to work like this. I can work just lifting stems that speak to me, call to me, make me feel like they're going to be a good thing, and I'll show you when I've made it. But it's basically 3 hand ties with a flat back. It's not rocket science. Funeral flowers do not have to be made into floral foam rings. Do not need floral foam. You can do something very simple and extremely effective. Just because something is simple doesn't mean it's wonderful. It's not wonderful. If something is simple, it can be as wonderful as something that is done with more expensive and more complicated mechanics. Often, the simpler is the more beautiful, I think. Anyway, I'm going to make them and I'll show you when I've done it. So here's the first of the 3, and this is what lays flat on the coffin. And then I'm going to make 2 more. You don't want to make them too high, otherwise they don't fit in the hearse. So you could make them really fat, but actually what you want is long and relatively slim. So anyway, I'm going to put that in mortar and make the next section. So here now there are 2 posies tied together, 2 bouquets tied together. They're not tied together yet, I'm holding them together. So this is it's coming together. This is what it's going to look like from the right-hand side, from being laid on the coffin. And that's the head end. And then there's space here for my third bouquet. But it's not going to be too high. Very important that it's not too high and that there's interest all the way round. So here is where bouquet 3 goes. I love the colours. I think they've been very clever with the colour. Those roses. Good. And there's the third posy, which is, very attractive on its own, but stay there. So and here's the gap on the side. You see where the dark edge is, and I just tuck the third posy in, and there you have a lovely sheaf of flowers to sit on the coffin. And I'm going to tie them together really tightly, cut the stems so they're all the same length. You can see how they'll lay flat on the coffin, like this. Now you see why I have arms like hands. But it can sit in water overnight, and I will take it to London in water and probably lay it on the coffin myself tomorrow morning. It'll be incredibly well conditioned because it's been made this morning. I cut them yesterday. They had all day yesterday in water. They will have all day today in water, and the funeral's at 12 o'clock tomorrow. I will leave here probably at 6 tomorrow morning to drive up to London to be at the funeral director's around 8 o'clock. Because funeral directors really like to get everything in and ready early. They like to know what they're doing. Anyway, there you go. I'm just going to tie it all together and put it back in a vase. If I put it down, you can see the state of my studio. There we are. I need my string. you've got to get it really, really tight, really tight. You don't want it falling apart. And then tomorrow when I set it up, I will tie ribbon around, pink ribbon around the waist to cover up the string. Here, I'll just show you, and then I'll put it. Then I'll snip the stems and do I say it myself? And I'll snip the stems and get it ready to spend the day in water. So this is the view that everybody sitting in the church will have. And as the coffin is carried down, the people on the right will see this side. The stems will be there, but they will be tied with ribbon and they'll be shorter. I've got to cut them a bit shorter. So that's one side, the head end, and the other side. And then if they like, they can cut it into 3 after the ceremony and after the service, or after the event, after the funeral, and give it to people as gifts, or take them home and just have them. Right, so next I'm going to make these 4 mixed buckets. So they're just buckets, they're tin buckets, and they got upside down hanging basket frames firmly attached to the tops so that I can pick them up and move them around. You see? They're really simple. Again, simple mechanics, fabulous flowers. You do not need, complicated mechanics do not make necessarily extraordinarily beautiful flowers. This is a simple idea and it's going to work really, really efficiently. And I'm going to fill them with flowers, and they're going to be like, this is a really cavernous church, enormous church in Chelsea in London. And so the idea is to shrink the focus. It's a small number of people coming to this funeral. It's not a huge congregation. So what we're doing is we're shrinking the focus around the point of the exercise, around saying goodbye to this lovely young lady. And so what these buckets are going to be like soldiers guarding. They're going to just guard her as she gets laid down. We have to be careful that they fit in the car and they're not so enormous that the pallbearers, the undertakers, can't get around them. So I've got to be careful that they're not too enormous, but they must have masses of wow factor so that when people come in, they see them. It's like anthropology. You're telling people how it's going to be, how it's going to work. People, which is great because then they can focus on the matter in hand rather than not being certain what's going on. So that's my next job. And here are the 4 buckets, which are going to be like sentries around the coffin. And though I say it myself, I'm very happy to have been asked to make them. I think it is always an enormous compliment to be asked to make flowers for a funeral, to celebrate a person's life. All lives are valuable, all lives achieve something, no matter how short, no matter how cut short the life. All lives need some kind of celebration, and these are certainly celebratory. So I'm going to tuck them out of the light now, and then at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning I'll pack the car and we'll head off to London with them. And I hope that they are soothing as they are meant to be. And here are the single stems of dahlias, which are going to be put on the coffin by all the congregation. They're cut quite short, and they're very carefully put in so that they can be pulled out one at a time without pulling them all out, I hope. Anyway, and I've put some ribbon and some scissors. I must remember my ribbon and scissors. And on journeys like this, I will always take my snips, and possibly, we'll see how full the car is, but a bucket of spares, so that we can, just in case there's any pudging that needs doing when we get there. Pudging is a technical term for finishing off an arrangement when you put it in place. So thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry it's been a rather sad subject, but these arrangements would work just as well in a wedding, at a christening. Flowers are necessary at all times of life, from birth through all the celebrations to death. I'm going to put the details of the Brain Tumor Society in the blurb so that you can look it up if you're interested, and possibly even make a donation, because there is very little research going on into brain tumours, and yet it is one of the biggest. More young people and young adults are diagnosed with brain tumours than any other cancer at the moment. So it's obviously worth some research, and the outcomes are no better now than they were when my brother died 15 years ago, having had a recurring, non-malignant, but recurring brain tumour at the top of his spinal column for nearly 20 years. So this is not a popular subject, I appreciate, but it is worth paying some attention. Thanks very much for watching, and I'm sorry it's a depressing subject, but I hope you found it interesting. And if it encourages you and your floristry, then I have done a good job. Thanks. Bye.